Hey,
All
how are
right,
you?
you're always, I'm doing good. You're always my first geometry student for the week. So what do you got? You still reviewing algebra?
We're on to ratios, proportions.
Okay, you got some stuff you can send me?
Yep. Sending it now. Starting the photos. Go. Sending now.
All right. My phone always gets it before my computer does. Start on the one on the left.
The one on the right.
Okay. All right, let's look at number one. Can you read it? Okay.
Sorry, I'm just messing with just adding the control panel. Yeah, I can see it.
Okay.
Ratio.
So we're looking for the female to male ratio.
5 to 12.
Is it 5 to 12? We need, how many females are there? How many,
Oh, there are 12. Okay.
how many males are there?
Oh, okay. So there are 8 males, so
7.
5 to 7. Okay.
12 minus 5 is 7.
Okay.
Number 2, a child's fire truck has 2 gear belts, one in front and one in back. Okay, I'm going to draw one like that, one like that. Small one's in the front. Well, we don't know that actually. When the front gear belt turns 5 times, the rear one turns 8 times. So first of all, that tells me that I drew it wrong. In other words, the reason I know that, let me see if I can explain it. There's the belt. Well,
Oh, I get it.
the belt is going to go the same speed, regardless of how big the gear is. Okay? So, if I take the circumference of that circle, that's how far this thing moves when the truck is moving. And if this turns 8 times while this turns 5 times, it can't happen if this is the smaller wheel. It has to be the other way around. This has to be 5 and that has to be 8. And let's not get really hung up on why. That's more of a physics question than a math. But, so this is the front. This is the rear. I switched them. And And if the front belt turns 800 times,
So
what's the number of times the rear belt turns?
So you would set it up as two proportions, and
okay, give me the equation.
So you'd have 5 over 8 times 800 over x.
Times?
Because you're going to cross multiply.
Well, let's set it up first. We'll do the algebra once we get it set up. The key to all of these problems is the setup. So there actually are a number of ratios I can make here. I can say 800 is to 5. This one is to this one. Equals x is to 8. And now it's a piece of cake. I can cross multiply and I get 6,400 divided by 5. I don't even need to cross multiply actually. I just need to multiply both sides by 8. As long as I've set it up where my variable is in the numerator, I can save myself a step on the algebra. So the front one is going to move 6,400 divided by 5, whatever that number is. But certainly more than 800, because the front one moves 8 times for every 5. Now, like I said, there's lots of ratios that work here. It's a little like similar triangles. There's not only one ratio that you can do. You actually gave it to me in the ratio of 5 is to 8 as 800 is to x. Well, notice this gives me the same answer for x. I still get x equal 8 times 800 divided by 5, which is the same answer I got when I used the ratio of this to this. So all those ratios are proper. Number 3. You have an oil tank. Well, I'll draw it as a right cylinder, even though it didn't tell us that. But it's 3/5 filled in 6 minutes. What's the only suitable equation to use to find the number of minutes it takes to fill the entire tank?
Six x equals 3/5.
Well, let's put the x over here. What's this distance from there to there? If it's 3/5 on the bottom, that's 2/5, right? So what kind of ratio can I set up? I got a couple of choices. They're going to give us the same answer. Give me an equation where I can solve for x. Where the subject matter here is ratios. So set up a ratio. Let it equal to another ratio.
Okay, so it'd be d.
I'm not even looking at the answers. Let's just do it. I want to make sure you understand this without the multiple choice aspect.
I don't understand it.
Okay, well, if it takes 6 minutes to fill 3/5, that's one ratio I can use. 6 is to 3/5, as x is to 2/5. Instinctively, we know that x has to be less than 6 minutes, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's going to take, it only took 6 minutes to fill 3/5 of it up, and we have less than that to finish filling up. We only have 2/5. So this is a good way to start. And now I can solve for x by multiplying both sides by 2/5. Now how do I solve that algebra problem?
6 by 2/5 divided by 3/5.
So tell me what to write next as we work towards an answer.
X equals 6 by 2/5 divided by 3/5.
Okay, so that's x equal 12/5 divided by 3/5. What is that simplified to? How do I solve that?
That would be 4.
Yeah. In other words, I flip and multiply. So my answer for x is 4. It's going to take 4 minutes. Now, let's go back and look at our equation. Which one of those is x equal to 4? Wow, none of them. Three over is not the same as 1/6. Moment. One momenta. Quite certain I did this right. Think here for a second. If that were the answer, then x would be equal to 30 divided by 3, which is 10, and we know that can't be right because it has to be a number less than 6. If this were the right answer, x would be equal to 3 divided by 30, which is 1/10, and that certainly isn't right. If C is the right answer, then 30x equals 3. So again, x equals 1/10. That can't be right. And if D is correct, we have 5x equals 18. X would equal 33.6. And that's the only answer that could even potentially be correct. The question is, where did I go wrong? Let me think for a moment here. It's got to be 3/5 is to 6 as 2/5 is to x, which means 3/5 x equals 12/5. Huh?
You still get x equals 4.
So if I multiply both sides, yeah, I still end up with x equal 4. I'm a little puzzled on this one. What other kind of ratio could we use? Let me think for a moment. See if I can get back to, no, I don't know how to get back to the drawing. Let's before we leave this, three-fifths is more than half. So that takes 6 minutes. Which of the following, okay, now I get it. Misread the problem. Which of the following is the only suitable equation to use to find the number of minutes it takes to fill the entire tank? So I was calculating x, and I came up with 4, which means it takes 10 minutes to fill the entire tank. And 3/5 of 10 is 6. So A is the correct answer. X equals 10. But it's not the X I have here. X plus 6 would equal 10. This is quite, before we leave this again, let's figure out how we could actually have done it properly. If I let x be that whole distance, now I can say 6 is to 3/5 as x is to 1. Right? Because x would be the entire tank, which is 5/5.
Yep.
And if I do that, then I immediately get x is 6 divided by 3/5, which is this. 6 equals, when I multiply both sides by 3/5, I get 6 equals 3/5 x. So if I set it up properly, I do immediately get it. It's still a ratio problem. And it's a difficult ratio problem, but only if you misread it like I did. Alright, now we know what they're talking about, we'll be able to do the others. If it takes 1/6 of a day to fill 2/3 of a pool with water, what part of a day will it take to fill the entire pool? So give me ratios I can write an equation with. Actually very similar to the previous problem. I'm glad we stuck with the previous problem until we got how to set it up.
So you could put 1/6 over 2/3 and x over 1.
Well, now x, yeah. Now simplify.
2/3 x equals 1/6.
Well, they want us to solve for x. This is not a multiple choice, so there's not anything to choose from.
Mm-hmm.
So solve this for x, which means simplifying that.
Oh, okay. So by 6. 1/36.
No, it becomes 1/6 times the reciprocal of that, which is 3/12, which is 1/4. So it's going to take a fourth of a day to fill the entire pool. And that makes sense. A fourth is more than a sixth, but it's certainly not double. Double a sixth would be a third. And we shouldn't be double. In other words, there's only a third more of the pool to fill up. Make sure you know how to do this algebra. So all you do is flip the bottom and multiply to get that. And then simplify. Okay. So if I say y colon is the same as is to 7, so this is the same as saying y is to 7 as 5 is to 3. Well, that means y is to 7 as 5 is to 3. Well, what else does that mean? If I do a little cross multiplication and division, which one of these can I produce? Notice I can never produce the first one because I can't get y divided by 3. I could cross multiply, watch. I get 3y equals 5 times 7. And now I can divide y by 5 and the right side by 3, so I can get y is to 5 as 7 is to 3. So can we find that one anywhere on our choices?
Yeah, C or D. Or D.
Well, which one? I've written it upside down, reverse it. In other words, if this is true, then it's also true that 5 is to y as 3 is to 7. And that is C, and only C. D has the 5 is to y part, but it doesn't have the right side of it properly. Now, before we go on, let's just look at this again. Starting from this point here. In other words, this is what they've said means. Y is to 7 as 5 is to 3. Now, do you notice why I figured out you can never get y is to 3? Because you cannot rearrange this proportion such that you have y over 3. I can rearrange it so that I have y over 5. But I cannot, by dividing both sides by 5. But I can never get y over 3. I guess I could divide both sides by 3 so that I had, hold on, I guess I could do this. Y is to 3 times 7 as 5 is to 3 times 3. Then I could multiply both sides by 7, so I could end up with y is to 3 as 7 times 5 is to 3 times 3. But that's not one of the choices. So I really cannot, I would never conveniently be able to turn this thing into a y is to 3. In other words, whenever you have these proportions, there's lots of ways you can write that. The way it was given to us was y is to 7. But what that also means is a couple of other things. It means y is to 5 as 7 is to 3. And it also means 5 is to y as 3 is to 7. Whenever you have a fraction equals a fraction, you can turn both of them upside down and it does not affect the equality of it. got time for one more. These are actually some pretty good problems. I like these. They make you think a little bit. So how do I get x over y? This is what I want down here. What can I start by doing?
Multiply one of the sides by the denominators.
Well, if we're looking to get x over y, why don't we divide both sides by y?
No, that works.
That's a good starting point because I got almost now everything I need. If I multiply both sides by y, now I got that. So now all I got to do is get rid of the 3/5. How do I get rid of the 3/5? Multiply by what?
5.
5/3. You could do it piecemeal. In other words, I could multiply by 5 and then divide by 3. But that's the same as multiplying by 3/5. Whoops. Notice that the whole thing looks really cool if I just do this. I'm going to multiply the left side by 5/3, and I'm going to multiply the right side by 5/3. That's going to disappear, and I'm going to be left with my x over y. And what do I have on the right side? That becomes 2, that becomes 1, that becomes 1, that becomes 2. I get 5/2. C. Yeah, I wish we had a little more time on these. These are, I can see they're a little challenging for you. And it's nothing that once you see how to do them, you shouldn't be able to get. All ratio problems are like all 6 of these problems. You just set up, or I should say proportion problems. Set up the proportion, solve the algebra. That's all you need to do. Okay?
All right.
All right, Cole. I will talk to you next Monday.
Okay.